Welcome back to Getting Started with Linux. I'm your host, Daniel Lowrie, and we're back with more about the command line with our good man here, Ross. He is joining us to help us work through the big old scary command line. We've seen it. We've gotten a little more familiar with it, but there's always a caveat to these things. You started talking about commands.
I did.
And structuring commands and how they're built and how they're constructed. And it seems like this can get a little complicated.
And I almost lost you there.
Yeah, I know, right? That's when the glazed overlook starts happening. This is probably where a lot of people do tune out because it's like, this is really complex stuff. Can you break that down further for us and speak more on these constructed commands?
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
Talked a little bit in previous videos about how to construct things. So it's like scales, right? So you got to sit there and play scales forever and ever on the piano until you're sick and tired of it. And about the time you're sick and tired of it, well, maybe you're done with it. And so when we talk about constructing commands, you do it very simply. You run a command. There's lots of commands that can just simply be run. You type it, you hit enter, and it produces some sort of output on the screen, mostly. Sometimes the command itself just runs. Yeah. And so that's a command. Now, we go from a command, and we talk about putting options on commands. Now, you saw before, I used the ls command, as an easy example, and then I did like -L on the end of it. That's an option. Options come in two different formats, a minus sign and a single character, or because sometimes we run out of options and the ability to say, so you'll have like, something with compression that's -Z because all the other short ones were taken.
Yeah.
So we'll use a long option. So short options are minus sign and then a character, and long options are double minus, not an M dash, but minus minus, and then some sort of maybe like status or listing or something like that. So a more of an English language kind of phrase.
So it could be a little more friendly to use those types of options.
A little bit, yeah. And some people they won't remember the short options, they'll remember the long
Especially
options.
if it's -Z for status,
exactly.
right?
When it's really intuitive.
Yeah, super intuitive.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and then the last part of that, so we have an option, a command with an option or several options. When you put options together, what you do is you do -LA instead of -L -A. You could do it the other way, but it's considered much more reasonable and elegant, shall we say. We're always about elegant in Linux. To do it with the options together. Okay. Now, the last piece of this would be an argument. And so what I always talk about is we can do the command, we can do an option, and then an argument is typically something like a file or a location, or let's say you're archiving something, it would be the source that I'm going to pull things from.
Okay.
So why don't we jump over to the command line here, and we'll take a look at what this looks like. So in my shell here, what I'm able to do is, of course, the ls. That's a single command. The ls -LA, -L was just a single option, and then I can execute that, no problem. You see that gives me a totally different listing. I could do something additional, and you'll see me reflexively use the clear command. I won't. It's kind of like washing your hands. Just
second nature.
Exactly. So ls -1 gives me another interesting output. This is much more similar to, say, just like a DOS dir command listing. This is oftentimes very helpful because I might want to get a count of the number of files that have come back in my output, etc. So this ls and then some options. Now we can say, I want to do this ls command, and let's introduce you to the up arrow real quick. The up arrow gives me the ability to re-execute previous commands. So ls -L and then etc. So now what I have is I have the command itself, the ls. I've got the -L there, which is the option or options, as the case may be, and then etc., which is my argument. So command, option, argument, COA. And so when I hit execute there, it's going to go off and do not an ls in the local directory, but on that remote directory over there. So that's the concept of that. Let's show you one last thing here, which is, let's say, for example, that I up arrow to that command there, and I decide that it's not just enough for me to show the contents of the directory etc. I want to see all contents of all subdirectories under etc. Well, I could, backspace over and retype things. I could use the arrow to move back over and put a capital R there. What I can do that's a lot easier is just append a -R at the end. Now, this might not look terribly intuitive, but when you think about it, I have done what I said before, which is I have constructed something and kept iterating until I get what I want, and now I need to add one single final ingredient, and when I hit enter, it gives me the contents of all directories and subdirectories under the etc command.
Now, as you said, that might not be the most intuitive thing, but it sure is handy to not have to work your way around that command structure or retype the command in a way, especially if it's a super long command. And that being said, I've dealt with this before. A lot of times I'll have like a major command. I've got the executable itself. I've got the arguments to go along with it. Then I've got an option that's as long as anything you can think of. It's a train. And now I've made a mistake and I've got to retype that in. Is there a way that I can make that a whole lot easier for myself? Kind of like what you just showed, like some of these shortcut things.
Yeah, the easiest way to deal with this is just simply to use, if we'll switch back over here, is simply to use the left and right arrows. So I use the up arrows to scroll through my history. And we'll talk about history a little later on, but it's just basically every command I've ever typed, and then I'm at the bottom. I'm at the last position, and if I hit up arrow, I can just basically go back through those. So now, when I want to edit something like this, I could backspace over this, go back over to where the L is, and press the capital R there, and it does exactly the same thing. So I have the editability of the command line. Is that a word? Yeah, it's a word. It's
if it's not, we'll use it.
Editability-ness of the command line.
Or adding to the English language.
And that really helps a lot. So there are several different ways that you can set your command line editor options. You can set it to VI, Emacs, and various other things.
Okay.
But I typically leave it the way it is, unless you have a clear preference for one or the other.
Okay, makes sense. All right, so now we're getting a little more familiar with working with commands, their structure, how they should look, but some ways in which we can fiddle with it to just be ease of use kind of thing. Anything else we need to know about working in the command line with when we're executing commands at that terminal?
Actually, there's a very important thing that we didn't cover yet, and it's called tab completion. So the concept is here that I have oftentimes, I'll make a definitive statement here.
Yeah.
Sometimes the commands are really long. Sometimes the directory structures are immensely long. So for example, if we'll switch over to the system here, I'll show you how this works. So remember, we're talking about I'm in my home directory, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to a far-flung directory in the system, like user share, doc, and then the beauty of tab completion is this. I may not know what's in user share doc, but I can find out very quickly. If I hit the tab key once and it doesn't do anything, it's either an empty directory, or if I hit the tab key twice, it'll show me that there are contents in there. All I have to do at this point, because it's shown me each one of the subdirectories that are there, I can type PAC, just enough of it, and hit tab, it completes it. So now if I hit enter, I'm in user share doc packages. So tab completion makes it very easy for you to almost sound out or feel out the directory structure that you're trying to get through. And the other thing is, if I'm executing some sort of a command, so let's clear this now, by executing some sort of a command that begins, let's say with ls, I could type ls and then double tab, and it'll show me every file that's executable in my path that begins with the characters ls. So now I have the ability to go, well, let's see, so lsblk. Great. Let's type lsb, just enough. LK automatically completes, and then I hit enter and I can see the block devices that are on my system. This is critical because there are times when you're going to be typing commands, how should we say, that could be detrimental to your system if they were mistyped. You want to sound these out or tab them out to make absolutely certain that you're typing the rm-rf command against a particular directory as opposed to / a space and then something that doesn't exist. You can ruin large parts of your system if you're not careful, and you'll see that most administrators will take care to tab these things out for those commands that are like, lobbing a hand grenade on the system.
I love using tab completion. It's definitely your savior. It's something you need to get super familiar with, but I'll use it a lot of times to make sure that I've understood arguments and options correctly, because it won't tab completes if I've got something messed up. So it can be super helpful in a lot of variety of different ways. I love that feature.
There's one more piece about this, and some of the commands, in particular, I've noticed that systemctl for the systemd, the the boot up and services management. Actually, if you're using systemctl, it will let you tab complete some of the sub commands that are inside of it. That's a very fine thing in a command. I really like it when that happens. A lot of the other commands don't do that, but the systemd programmers took care to make it so that it was a lot easier to deal with.
Awesome stuff. Anything else we need to know about this specific topic?
Oh, probably another 30 videos, but yeah, not for this one.
But not for this one. All right, excellent stuff. We definitely gave you a good bone to chew on, so go take that information, assimilate that, and as always, if you didn't quite understand it, rewatch it over and over again until it makes sense to you. Thanks for watching, everybody. We're going to call it a day, and we'll see you in the next episode.